I've really been toying with this subject matter for a long time in my head. Just that idea of, I work with people all the time to try and teach and encourage, and yet I often see people who, even with all of the options, have a great struggle to move forward and determine what their best course of action is. And that can be challenging, because then on the flip side of that, then sometimes myself or someone like Tom from Assisted Living Locators or some of these other people that I work alongside so closely will get a call that is because someone is now in a critical situation where they've waited too long, there's been an accident or a change in health of any type, and then all of a sudden those changes are imminent and we have to do things quickly, and it's no longer the luxury of having time. So it's just my hope and my privilege to really encourage you to be proactive and to be confident when you have checked out your options, learned what you needed to learn, and to be able to feel confident in the decisions that you make. So with that, Diane, as a licensed professional counselor, you see people traveling through large and small stages of change on a daily basis. Let's start by touching on why is it so hard for most of us in the first place when we think about making a change in our life?
Great question. Okay, so I'm going to open it up first of all and ask each of you to think of a change you're considering. So while we're discussing these matters, think of something that you are currently wrestling with. And it can be as small as, what am I going to make for Thanksgiving? Or, should I go to my sister's house or should we host it here? Or a decision about your future or, your home life or estate planning or, whatever it is. So as we're discussing these questions, think about your current struggles, and it could be more than one, so we can kind of get it to a personal level for you. So to begin, the process of change, first of all, is very hard. So I'm a therapist. I work with people in my office every day who are wrestling with trying to do something new. The process of therapy is about change, and so we are wrestling with change all the time. It's very normal to struggle with change. We like routine, we like things the same, we don't want to change, usually. Maybe if you're that 1 in a million person who's super spontaneous and doesn't even think about the consequences, but that's very rare. That's usually a 2-year-old who's frolicking on a playground somewhere. So one of the aspects of why it's so difficult for us is our brain. Our brain is a lovely, wonderful response organ. It has a big job. And one of the biggest jobs of your brain is to keep you safe. And that is generally the biggest job. So the brain uses the 5 senses to take in information and respond. And its number one job is to keep you safe. So the brain's going to warn you, uh-oh, watch out, here comes a curb. Don't miss your step. Uh-oh, there's a threat. The roads are icy. Oh no, it's gonna rain. Uh-oh, I forgot my shoes. Well, we wouldn't forget our shoes. We're all grown-ups. But you know what I mean? I forgot my phone. Or, I can't remember where I put my keys. So the first thing your brain's gonna do is assess for danger and determine if this is a real threat. And what happens? We go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. There's 4 responses that we go into. Fight, which is, I'm gonna fight you because I'm trying to stay safe. Flight, I'm gonna run because I don't feel safe. Or I'm gonna fawn, which is just imagine a deer sitting there looking cute and freeze. So this is what your brain does on a regular basis every time you're contemplating something. And the brain doesn't know the difference. Research has shown the brain doesn't know the difference between a real threat or an imagined one. So you can just be thinking about how hard something's going to be. You can just be thinking about all the reasons not to do something, or you can just be thinking about how scared you are, and the brain goes, oops, we have a problem, and it goes straight to a high arousal response. So that's one of the primary reasons why change is so difficult, is the brain is wired to keep you safe, and it's fear-based for a reason. You're just going to immediately go to, I'm afraid. So it's completely normal.
I did have to laugh on the shoe comment because I haven't walked out without shoes. I have walked out with 2 different ones in different colors because I have the same shoe in 2 different colors. So that's never good as an adult. So if our brains are essentially working against us when we consider changing from our status quo, what does it look like from the time someone initially considers something to a time when they actually move and feel comfortable acting on a thought or an idea?
Right, so I immediately go to what I would think of as the stages of change. So there are 5 stages, and there's other theories that kind of have 6 or 7, but we all kind of agree that there's this change model. And the first one is pre-contemplation. It's a fancy term for, I'm not even thinking about changing. I'm not contemplating it. Or, someone has said something to me, but yeah, I'm not interested in changing. So sometimes we call this denial, or procrastination, or just lack of self-awareness. And the second one is contemplation. And generally speaking, experts agree that we kind of move through these stages. So we kind of start in this pre-contemplation denial stage. We move to contemplation, which is a fancy term for, I'm starting to think about it. I'm starting to kind of weigh the pros and cons of my decision. I'm starting to maybe go to a Savvy Seniors thing, right? Like, I'm starting to kind of be aware of, I might be doing a little bit of research. And then and the intention of change. So contemplation is, I'm intending to change. And I see the change in the foreseeable future. The third stage is preparation. So now I'm starting to do stuff. And we're really kind of determined. And then the fourth stage is action. We have decided to change, and we are making some steps. We are acting. And then the fifth stage is maintenance of the change. Within each one of these stages, we have resistance. Resistance is a normal, human, research-based dynamic of change. So when my clients come into my room and they say, I just really don't feel like it, I just really don't want to, or they just go, no way, I'm not doing that, then to me that's, okay, we're experiencing some resistance. So as you're looking at these changes that you're considering, notice, I'm acting a little resistant. I'm getting kind of activated or nervous or stubborn or, getting in my own way. And researchers and theorists and psychologists and therapists, we always ask ourselves, what needs to happen to move from pre-contemplation to contemplation? Contemplation to preparation. What needs to happen in order for that to occur? And there's a lot of good answers in that realm.
Get in our own way. We've never done that, right? Right? Never. So one of the things that you and I discussed was that idea of a risk versus reward when you're making a decision. So I think of this often as I'm helping seniors downsize, because most every client that I work with almost always has some version of, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner, once they're safely settled, and yet I know that they agonized, sometimes for years, to get to that point of feeling comfortable for that and for actually pulling the trigger. So how can you talk a little bit more about that idea of looking at the risk versus reward as a catalyst to moving forward?
Right, so that's one of the things I look at with my clients is, what is the risk of this change and what is the reward of this change? And usually we don't make a decision unless the risk outweighs the reward, because we really like rewards, right? Just think about it. And even from the brain's perspective, the brain loves reward. We have a reward center. Why do we crave sugar? Why do we want to, do the fun thing before we do the hard thing? So we really enjoy it, and our brain is really keen on it too. So the brain really loves to be rewarded, and then we personally like reward. And I would say most of us, and even most humans, are risk averse, right? We don't like risk. We want to stay safe, and the brain wants you to stay safe. So, but there are genuine risks to staying where you are and not moving forward. And if the risk outweighs the reward, it's actually a formula. So if you look at a fraction, risk over reward, if you flip it and the reward is higher than the risk, you're going to stay, generally speaking, we stay stuck. So what needs to happen to shift the risk to reward ratio? Well, sometimes it's a crisis, right? We're making a change even if we don't want to, because now we're at a high-risk, acute triage situation. This is happening. We don't have a choice. Some people create a crisis. Who's nagging you, right? Who's on your case? Your kids, your spouse, who's pushing the button for you? That is someone or something, or even for yourself, trying to create a little bit of chaos. So when chaos occurs, pay attention to that. Like, even if it's little, I'm afraid, or someone keeps talking to me about this, and I'm staying comfortable over here. I don't want to take a risk. But change will occur sometimes without our choice because the crisis is too big. So that's one of the reasons why people stay in a posture of not changing. So that's just something to think about.
And I feel like the last few years, just with COVID and all that we experienced here, that really turned things on its head. And people who were comfortable in the situation that they were, whether they were living in a senior community or living in a home, so much of that was determined with your support system around you, because for some people it was great. We stayed home with our kids and played games and cooked and had fun and watched movies, and other people were stuck in their homes by themselves. It was just night and day depending on your situation, either a very somewhat positive thing or very, very negative, depending on that. So let's jump into the physical symptoms that many of us feel when we contemplate important decisions. And would you say that these symptoms get more pronounced as people age?
Okay, well, this is completely my realm therapeutically, is the physiological effects of anxiety, stress, decision-making, and certainly we all experience anxiety and stress and physiological response to, triggers or risk-taking. And one of the things that I work with my clients is just how to bring your body to a natural state of relaxation and calm. Because one of the things that happens when we get overwhelmed, and Jason, you're going to be talking about overwhelm in one of your questions too as well, is our brain gets flooded. So this prefrontal cortex, this front of your brain, which is the last area of the brain that develops, is prone to overwhelm and flooding. So when our nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system goes up, our somatic, our nervous system goes up, high activation, this frontal lobe gets diminished. It's been shown in scans and research. And what is the prefrontal cortex doing? It's helping you make decisions. That's the area where logic, reasonable, rational cause and effect. If I do this, then this will happen. If I don't do this, then that will happen. So if we worry too much and get anxious all the time, then we have a harder time thinking straight. It's proven. So one of the things I want to do today, real quick, if we have time.
Absolutely.
I'm just doing it anyways, is I want to show you an exercise. And I was actually doing this in the car on the way here. Because when we can tell that our nervous system is aroused, which I was doing that. I was driving here, and what was I doing? I was thinking about this talk, and oh my goodness, am I ready? And how many people are going to be there? And I've never done this before. And so I started to get worried and nervous. And all of a sudden, my arousal level went up, and guess what happened? My breathing changed. I actually could not get a deep breath. And it happened almost automatically within seconds. So this is what I did. I started breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, very slowly. Inhale, and I want everyone to do this now. Inhale with your nose. Hold it. Exhale very slowly. Do it again. Inhale. Hold it. Exhale. Now, this isn't just some wackadoodle quacky stuff I'm showing you. This is science. So your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system work together. So sympathetic is, I'm worried. And so you get sympathy. Parasympathetic, bring it down with a parachute. So we can bring our body down just by breathing. So that's one technique I want you to think about the next time your brain is flooded.
I just like the word wackadoodle. So this is a little bit of a different spin on that. So what are some other tools that we can use when we start to feel anxious or even spiraling down this rabbit hole of doom is what I call it, when we're thinking about a change? Even one where we anticipate being in a better place, and yet, you know, I have things that I'm contemplating in my life, and 1 minute I'm so excited about that, and then the next minute I'm like, oh, but then I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and oh my gosh, I don't have time, and I don't have time now, and how am I going to do this? And we can see ourselves spiraling, and yet it can be really challenging to stop that. So what are some concrete tools that we can use to do that better?
Okay, there's several in this one. So I also practice cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. So I think about cognitive processes and kind of what your mind is doing, and it's usually your thoughts. So what is your narrative? So one of the first things I'm doing clinically when my client comes in is I talk about, what do you think about? What's it like in there? What are the stories you're telling yourself? And there's a fancy term we use called cognitive distortions. And you can look this up. It's very commonly talked about. And cognitive distortions are what if thinking, well, what if this goes wrong? What if that happens? What if I can't do it? What if I'm not ready? What if I don't have enough money? What if the economy tanks? What if my kids won't help me? What if I get sick? So what if thinking is a bit of a rabbit hole. So we really don't know the what ifs, but we do think about it. And so one of the things we say there is catch yourself if you're stuck in a cognitive distortion. And use your prefrontal cortex, that logical brain, to fight what is going on with your imaginary self. So we can create all kinds of stories. Another one is, another cognitive distortion is catastrophic thinking, worst case scenario. And we think about catastrophic thinking and worst case scenarios to keep ourselves safe, right? This is a good thing. This isn't bad to think about the future and what potentially could go wrong. We should have a plan. We should have a catastrophe plan. I have a catastrophe plan for my practice. If I get hit by a bus going from here to my office today, Dan over there on his cell phone is going to show up, and he's going to be the dude who notifies all my clients, and even a colleague is his backup in case he has to go to the hospital with me. So of course we have catastrophic planning, but catastrophic thinking can keep you really stuck, and it's considered a cognitive distortion if that's all we're thinking about. So you want to check the evidence of your cognitive distortion. That's the first thing you do. I would say, okay, well, what evidence do you have to support this thought that you're having? Oh, well, I don't know. I'm just worried. Okay, well then we don't really have any evidence, do we? Or you know what, last time I did this, I ended up in the hospital. Or last time I did this, I ran out of money. Or last time I did, so there could be some evidence, and we talk about that. And we evaluate the kind of the basis for thinking this way. But we shouldn't be stuck in cognitive distortions. They're not healthy, and our mind and our body, again, will think that whatever you're thinking about is real, even if it's imagined. So try to shift your thinking. Oh, it's a beautiful sunny day. I'm grateful for, make a list of all the things you're grateful for. Maybe I'm thinking too much about this thing. I should shift and do something else. I got to distract myself to get out of that rabbit hole. So the way we think really does get in the way and impact our decision making.
No, that's a great point. And one thing I like to add is that idea that as you say things out loud, your brain will perceive these things to be true, regardless of whether they are or not. And so I find that, of course, this happens with negative thinking, but it will also happen with positive thinking. And that's something that, I try and often do, is that idea of feeding ourselves positive messages, sometimes that even are not yet true, but that getting our brains to believe those things will help those items come true. So hopefully that might be a little bit helpful. So I've often gotten through making challenging decisions with the idea that even by making an imperfect decision, it's usually better than no decision at all, and that I'm ready to accept whatever consequences go along with whatever decision that is. Do you feel like that's a healthy model or potentially risky?
It's both. Yeah, so I think that we need to be careful in terms of how we go about making change, and oftentimes we don't know what the outcome's going to be until we start to take some action. So I think there's validity in both, getting moving, getting going, but also just kind of, without a plan. I think, people make a plan and then take a step. I also think of the metaphor of a door, behold, I place before you an open door. I might not know what's on the other side of the door, but my job is to take a step through the door. And I also like the breadcrumb metaphor, follow the breadcrumbs. You never know. You never know where you might end up. And I love C.S. Lewis's quote about you're never too old to start a new dream or to make a change and start something new. So I think that your point is valid, and I would obviously exercise care and caution.
And I just have to take a shout out to my husband standing in the back, because I am so often grateful for the things that he has talked me out of after the fact, that I was so convinced was a good decision. And then weeks or months later, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't do that. And so I would just say that idea of having a sounding board, having a friend, a family member, a therapist, a doctor, a trusted person in whatever you are thinking to bounce these ideas off of, that will give you an objective opinion, but who also cares for you. and that will not just, they're not out there to just squash your dreams, right, Mark? Sometimes I feel like that, but no, just kidding. No, they're there to be an objective person to help you evaluate some of these really, really important changes that you might be making. So I know that you have a very specialized expertise. You touched on it a little bit ago, called the neurofeedback brain training. Can you tell us more about what that is and how it works?
Yeah, thank you. So this is a plug for my, specialty. So I work with all ages and stages of life. So anyone who has a brain is a good client, and most of us have one, so that's good. Although we don't know for sure sometimes. No. All kidding aside, so what I do is I help brains perform better. So it's similar to physical therapy for your brain or brain exercise. So it's very non-invasive and comfortable and relaxing, and I teach brains to perform better. So anyone with ADHD, so my students who are struggling to complete a task or homework or studying or preparing for the LSAT or MCAT, or even just high school exams, middle school exams. So the student population is big for me. Kiddos, my youngest is 5 and my oldest client is 89. So usually anyone who is struggling with brain performance issues. So it's usually a person who doesn't sleep very well. Insomnia is a big category for me. Migraine headaches, chronic pain, memory, anxiety, stress. And brain training is a scientifically based modality that is proven to work, and it's a medication alternative to these treatments. So it's non-invasive, and it takes about 20 sessions. So if you're thinking of doing it, you've got to be committed to doing it, because the brain is a real juggernaut. Like, it gets stuck in patterns, and we just have to teach the brain to formulate new patterns and new neural pathways. And guess what, folks? We all now know, don't we, that the brain can generate. It's regenerative. We used to think that the brain stopped growing and stopped improving after we stopped growing. But up until the time that we say goodbye to this good earth, our brain is capable of regenerating and creating new neural pathways. So stroke victims, anyone who's had an accident, traumatic brain injury, we have wonderful modalities, not just neurofeedback, to help brains work better. And if we have a good brain, we generally feel better and we generally act better. So that's one of the things that I specialize in. Thank you.
I'm going to throw in, do you have any stories that you can share of people that you've worked with that have, really come back from some of these challenging things in their life after doing neurofeedback?
Oh my gosh. Okay. If I had an hour, but because of HIPAA, right, I'm a confidential clinician, so I can't reveal any specific stuff except for my mom, who gives me permission to talk about her because she's awesome. So she's 91 and she lives on her own, and she drives and goes to Meijer and gets her groceries, and she is independent, and I just want to be her when I grow up. I just love her so much. But she did neurofeedback when she was 86, I think, and primarily just because I wanted to practice on her and just see what would happen. And and at the time, I didn't know it, but she was struggling with anxiety and high blood pressure. And her anxiety is gone, and her blood pressure, she is medication free. So that's one example. And then my husband, who's in the back of the room, who I've made fun of already a couple times, he is a sleep dysregulation person, so he doesn't sleep great, and he's a headache guy. So he started neurofeedback, I don't know, honey, like 10 years ago. Yeah, and now he doesn't sleep perfect, but he doesn't get up all the time like he used to, and he sleeps through the night now, and he's primarily like, once he's up, because his brain starts going. So he's just got an active, busy brain, and that's very common. So sometimes he'll come in for maintenance sessions, and then I don't even know the last time you had a migraine. Yeah, so he's been headache-free for years. So those are a couple of examples. And then students, oh my gosh, families, kiddos, they can leave the soccer field and their son is able to enjoy and play well with others. We all know those kids that are behaviorally challenged, that are kicking and screaming or biting or hitting or suspended from school. You know, those brains are dysregulated, and I've worked very well in that realm. And then also the ADHD, you know, not able to concentrate, not able to focus and get off of their Adderall. Those are huge success stories for me as well. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll have more opportunity when in the question and answer